let's have a retread on building our mages in Tainted Grail. Start on the option screen just so you guys can see that I'm a veteran. We have been blowing everything away. The reason I wanted to show that is because technically the things that I'm running around in are not necessarily best in slot, and I'm now basically speccing my character to be more fashionable as well as doing damage. The only real importance here is having a couple of pieces of the royal set on, which ultimately is going to be the best set overall. If you put all of the royal set on, you'll be so completely overpowered that nothing else is even relevant in the game. I kind of prefer to dress according to a bit of fashion than just going for the all-out raw numbers. I'll try and have some clips of me just blowing some stuff up. This is all in veteran, and you guys can see that it is just kind of crazy. With the intro over then, let's get into some tips and some advice for people that are playing the game. Firstly, when it comes to making money, a really good idea is to make sure that you save your origin potions until you have a lot of loot tucked away in your stash. This is what I've been doing through the game. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pop this. You guys are going to see that we're going to get an obscene amount of gold in a second, just so that we can go through some crafting. If you're one of those people that says the video is too long because I've included crafting, in the last video, people complained that it wasn't in the video. So it's going to be in the video this time. Anyways, now that we've done that, what I'm going to say is put all of your points into practicality so that we get a huge price of sold goods multiplier, and then just come over to your skill tree here, get into practicality and get these initial points in mercantile so that we can improve that even further. With that done, you can now go ahead and sell all of your loot to any vendor. We don't seem to have anything in the way of a limit on how much money we can make from a single vendor. I'm going to be going onto my sell from stash here and getting rid of all of the basic loot that I have so that we've got some money to work with when we get to the crafting section. Hopefully I have enough gold to show you guys everything that I want to show you and enough points that we can go ahead and start getting this on. I'm of course now going to use another origin potion. Of course you only ever want to do this when you have two. I do not know if there's a renewable way to get these, so be careful when you do this and do it when you do have a lot of loot saved up so that you can get the most out of it. When it comes to spending points, I want to start in the skill tree. Attributes, there's a lot more leeway with, but in the skill tree, there's a lot of stuff that we can talk about. I will go on here for a second, and there are some percentages that we need to talk about. Hopefully everybody is aware that when it comes to multipliers and stacking multipliers, raising the lowest multiplier is generally going to get you the highest effect. Because we're a caster, we need to raise our spell power first. This should be your first goal when you're just starting out. So when we're coming into the skill trees here, or damage, you're going to be coming over to the combat tab and maxing out your spell power. In addition to that, highly recommend getting your first point into mana battery and power and swiftness, and the remaining in the light armor set class so that you are able to get further damage from this and stay mobile. We're also going to go ahead and we're going to cap out that max mana whilst we're here. And now that we've got these basics in, we've got the multipliers starting to add up, I'm just going to go left to right and I'm going to get all of the things that I think are important for us. Some of this might actually surprise you, so it's up to you if you want to skip ahead and miss some of this. We obviously want the additional max health here. This is just very nice for us. It means we get more health added to our character, but it's just going to be more valuable as we add it. It shouldn't be surprising to know that we want better mobility, so we're going to come into the movement tab here. We're going to pay the tax to get the 20% stamina. We want additional dash and we want faster dash regeneration. This is going to allow us to stay away from the enemy. Now, I don't necessarily recommend getting this early, but up in bows, there is actually a node up here that affects us a lot, especially as this is a separate multiplier. So getting this and staying far away from enemies can potentially double your damage. Get this first point right here. This is why we don't want to get this early, because this is a pretty steep tax to waste a point completely. And then the next node to the right is an increase in damage for being further away from the enemy. Now, I like using the Scorching Blaze, charging up homing fireballs. And when we are even just a few meters away from enemies, that I've not come across anything that can survive it yet. The only thing that survives my hits on veterans, or on the hardest difficulty apart from survival, is a blocking close by enemy, and that's nearly dead anyway. But this is just going to make it so that if you're staying away from enemies, which you should be, you're going to get double damage. Sick. Coming into spirituality then, which is where there's going to be the most contention. Many people are going to agree and disagree with me. I really don't like the spell gorger because it's an additive bonus. So what we're talking about here is that is going to add a base. It's like 75% spell power to your spell power for for a 50% increase in mana. Now, it sounds like a fair deal, but it's not, because even, let's round my spell power to 200%, as a percentage of my total damage, that is immediately halved. So that 75% spell damage is actually only 37.5% of your total damage increased for 50% more mana. So I don't like it. There are very few ones that I've found that actually tempt me. There's a good lightning one if you want to be a lightning mage, but I'm just not really enjoying having a wand in my hand. I've tried it a few times. People keep on saying it's the best way. I don't care what you say. It just feels better to do it my way for me. If you like wands, put some points in there. You can get some good looking numbers out of this, but I just don't like it. Coming back to the more generalist stuff then, in here, we want to come down one so that we can get this stun node. Very powerful. You'll see it proc quite often, especially with big fireballs, because it is increasing the stun chance. When it's already a good spell for stunning, this is just really strong. And then down at the bottom here, we have when we crit an enemy, this is going to be something that we spread into later on. So early in the game, you might not want this, but once you're past like level 40 and you're getting towards the end of the final map, you're going to start feeling that just going raw spell damage isn't enough. And the way that we get around this is now by leaning into the crit side of spellcasting, because critting with spells is very doable. You're going to see this as we go through building up our character. And this here is another 30% multiplier, another separate one, although it does blend with another one we're going to see later on. So it's not a complete 30% extra, but it is a very strong node for you to get, especially once we start getting into the crit side of things. And then lastly, we're going to get the imbibed by elements so that we can build up status easier, which again, I find very important for my caster. You probably could take the elemental infusion, but it just doesn't come up often enough for me to care about it. And I guess if you wanted to go for a stealth build, you could get the elemental shock, but again, just not really necessary. So this is what we look like now in the general combat. We've maxed out arcane teachings for that base spell damage there. We've got imbibe by elements, so we get better elemental status build up, and we have gotten the better stun and additional damage when we crit, because we are going to be critting. Over in general then, we're going to come down and we're going to get this additional health for mana, absolutely massive, especially as that's then going to blend in with our additional health nodes that we took earlier. And then we're going to take a mana refund on critical hit. Pretty sick. Again, as I said, a lot of this tree, as you can see, is leaning into us doing crits with spells, which means when we get over to perception, the thing that we care about is the crit tree. We of course want extra crit. We want crits to build up. There haven't been many enemies where I've actually been able to build this up very much. We're of course going to take the crit damage down at the bottom, and we're actually going to lean around like this. These are technically tax stats, so I probably wouldn't put these in earlier, but we want to reach down to get the additional movement speed on crit, because that means when you get a critical hit, you just added 20% movement speed. 20% movement speed is just a little bit more additive damage to our spell power, right? It's just going to be an extra 20 on that number, but it's there and it's free for us basically if you can spare the points to get down there. That brings us over to practicality. Here we're going to get into healing, so if you do happen to take a hit, we want all these top ones, and you do want to make your way down to the additional 5% health that we get down at the bottom, meaning that we're getting lots of bonuses on health. The reason we want to do this is because we're not putting many points into health stats, so we're going to lean on the fact that we get some additional health from our mana, and then we want as many health percentage bonuses on top of that physical health so that we are able to not die too easily. I also recommend paying 1 point in buoyant armor and then getting the endurance training so that we get additional weight threshold, so it's easier for us to stay in light armor class. That brings us to status. This is the one that everybody disagrees with me on, but a lot of people do seem to be coming to my line of thinking on the streams after they see this in action. Immediately we want, if an enemy has a status, they take 30% more damage. This is a separate multiplier to most of the other ones, so that's just a straight up 30% of your total damage is going up. I like more damage from procs, especially as fire is a percentage based status, so if you get fire on something, that ticks for 2% of the opponent's maximum health. So even on higher difficulties, those fire ticks are very powerful. Having 75% more of that is quite good. This is a tax stat. It's very rare that I face an enemy that I'm able to fight for long enough that I get 2 status procs on it. You can put a second one in there if you wish to, but I don't think that's a very good one unless there's something really hard in some of the post-game areas, which I haven't been to yet. I'm very close to the end of the game. In fact, I'm able to get the final artifact for Arthur whenever I want it, but I wanted to do some other things before I actually finished it off. And that pretty much gives us all of the essential skills for a caster-based mage. So let's talk a little bit about summoning. I still haven't found them to be very good. You actually get a very high level summon from the Queen Bee, and there's some really good ones in the second map, but they're still just too slow for me to really enjoy working with them. And maybe it's just because we're playing such a fast character. There's almost a bit of a weird thing here where, because the caster wants to be in light armor and dodging a lot, the summons can't keep up with you. Maybe there's some kind of tank heavy version of a mage that could utilize summons. I still just don't have very much place for them when it comes to playing. I've done lots of toying around with it off stream, and I just can't get them to a place where I enjoy them, which is a shame, because this game probably has the best summon mechanics in any game like this, and they still just can't keep up properly. I don't know how you would fix it, unless, like I say, there was some kind of tanky way to play a mage, in which case that would be pretty cool. And there are tanky ways. You can play as a mana shield mage with dual wielding and get ridiculous results out of that, but I don't think that's the style of mage everybody's looking for, so I'm not really going to be demonstrating that here today. Because we have all of the stats that we want, realistically, the last of my stats now pretty much just go into practicality so that I can continue to sell stuff, and recycling resources whilst you're crafting is also very useful. There are things like potions lasting twice as long from your alchemy, and all of this other kind of just quality of life stuff that we get in practicality. This is probably where the last of my points are going to go. Now, I know someone is going to be tempted to mention a secret skill tree. However, what most people don't seem to be bearing in mind is it sets you into an ending, which makes it A, very spoilery, and B, locks you into things that people might not want. So if people start trying to spoil that down below, I'm just going to have to hide you from the channel forever. I'm sorry, we don't have that here. And it's not even that powerful, especially with how quickly we can already destroy everything. So I'm just not too bothered about it. That brings us to stats then. There are some taxes we need to put in here. I like to have 5 in total in practicality. This gets us to 100% of price sold. That means that we don't have to rely on origin potions just to make some money. It means you can play the game nice and easily. I've only done what I did so I can get a lot of money, so I can show you guys some stuff with the crafting. You shouldn't really play that way, but if you want to get like high amounts of gold, that's how you're going to do it. But 5 points plus the stuff that we get from the skill tree, 100% price sold goods, you're going to have a fairly decent time just doing that. Additionally, it is probably a good idea to get 10 into endurance. I have seen one caster set that goes all the way up to 15, and I am not going up to 15 for that set, and it's not good enough. The royal set I think needs 5, so with enough money and resources you could go to 5, but having the extra encumbrance limit is quite nice. And again, this just feels nice to play. 10 endurance is enough. Caved to all of the people that said we need to have endurance in the last video. There you go, you have it. You've got 10, that's all you get. Which brings us to spirituality and perception. Okay, now you're not seeing the crit chance that we get from the gear right now. I may have to come out of the menu so that we can just make sure that we are now fulfilling the stats. We're not. Let me get that 15 spirituality in, because otherwise we're not going to see. There we go. So now we can see we're currently on 64% crit chance. Ideally, we want that to be 100, and we can do that through crafting as well, or we can do it through stats. Right? I can pump all of this in there. I can get down to about here if I wish to, and that is, you know, pretty good. And you have to realize that once that's at 100%, that crit damage is multiplicative with your spell power, right? So we're on 4 times 3, so we're on 12 times whatever the damage is on your spell. Okay, so really powerful. This isn't going to get displayed on the spell, because obviously it only displays your natural scaling, but once you've gotten your crit chance up to 100%, you're in like ridiculous mode effectively, right? Now, I don't necessarily recommend that we do this purely through stats. Instead, what I'm going to say is probably around 25 is enough. And realistically, what you should generally do is raise whichever one is the lowest out of crit damage or spell power first. But there is one other thing that we're not talking about when we talk about just pure straight up damage stats, and that is that we need to have mana regen and mana capacity. And I like mine to be at least 30. And we are going to have to do this. A lot of it is through raw stats. There are some items that we can equip, and I'll show you guys those in a minute. But even with those items equipped, as you can see, you still need a large amount of spirituality to make that a thing. So if you're going to be using high powered, high mana cost spells, you really need to get that mana regen as high as you can get it. And that is probably above the spell power, is probably the main reason to take a loss of spirituality. So I guess we'll get ourselves to 30, as I said, and then we'll put that last point in perception, so maybe crafting won't be as important. That was on 89%. Well, 94, including all of the extra stuff that we just got. So now, how do I go about getting that crit chance as high as I can get it? Well, this is where the Queen set comes in, okay? So this is the armor set that we're wearing. I already have a video on the channel on how to get this. It's fairly simple, but it may well be that there's a bug in getting this as well, so make sure you save before you go ahead and get it. And you can pretty much do it, as you can see on my character here, in 2 pieces. So I've actually got the rest of this on here for fashion, because I decided, you know, it looked nicer that was like a skirt with her legs on there, and I don't really like the royal slippers, for example. So, you know, I could easily get some extra crit chance by that. We're on 99% by equipping those, I'm aware, and it's actually very expensive to upgrade the spell slingers. I know they're not the best. The same goes here as well. I'm may actually switch over to the royal gloves because they don't look bad on this set, actually. The Archdruid gloves, they look terrible. The bands look okay. They do look okay. But the wrist straps, maybe they're a bit tattered for the set. And again, we got a few capes here. So again, I could easily fix this with something like the Wings of the Oracle. But I really like the Usurper's Mantle. You actually get the Usurper's Cloak at the same time as the rest of the armor set. It comes at a base of 5 mana regen. It may well be the case that if we upgrade the Priestess's Cape, that it kind of overlaps it a bit, because it's much harder to get the Usurper's mana regeneration to rise. You can see at +6, we've got 0.3 extra. It starts at 5, right? However, the Priestess's Cape gets a full 1% every 2 levels. So the Priestess's Cape, you could upgrade that, and that probably does come out better. I feel like the purple just kind of matches the set better. So I'm sticking with the Usurpers. The best amulet, ignore that 120% max mana. It's actually 20%. That is a typing error. I had to check because I was like, that seems too ridiculous. The best amulet for the casters is always from one of the druidic shrines. I'm not going to detail where they all are here. The best amulet is whichever map you're on, go and hunt down the druidic shrines, give it the animal part, and that gives you the best amulet for the zone. It goes 10, 15, 20, and the Archdruids, which is at the end, is 20. There is a ring I need to mention, okay? It's very easy to find. I can actually point this out to you on the map. If you go to this druidic shrine, you come from this northern fast travel point, you come to the south, there's a cave, you continue along the path, and that'll bring you to the druidic shrine. Near the shrine is like a big rock, and there's a buried chest. This ring that gives you straight 1 mana regen is right there. I know it sounds like it's really small, but having just 1 for a ring slot is pretty good, and I haven't found anything else that's better for a ring slot, realistically. We've either got max mana, or we've got mana regen. There's really not very much that's good for us as casters in the jewelry department that I've seen. We're going to go ahead, we're going to stick with that. Okay, so let's take a quick look at some crafting, shall we? Now, unfortunately, I haven't found any craftable sets that are better than the sets that we find throughout the game. Don't know how I feel about that. I was quite excited about the idea that we'd be able to craft our own sets, get some cool stuff out of it, but it just hasn't come to pass that that's the case. As far as I can tell, we're just going to be using the best sets that get dropped by enemies and stuff, and that is just what we're going to have to work with. Something that I also don't like here from a balance perspective is that if I press on these royal boots here, you can see that the spell damage goes up by 5. There seems to be some kind of weird preferential system where armor that drops on the second map gets a higher upgrade multiplier than the stuff that doesn't. So if I compare the royal slippers to the spell slingers that I'm wearing, spell slingers only goes up by 1 per upgrade. So not only is the stuff that drops in the second map better, it upgrades better as well. This means that even something like the Wraps of Waning Moon, which starts out really strong, because as long as your health is below your max mana, which is very easy to do, because obviously my max health is way lower than my max mana right now. On my +10s here, we get 45% additional spell power, which is quite strong. Nice raw damage right there, right? But what that means is something like the Royal Gloves, which starts out looking not all that powerful, because it gets that +5 each time that we upgrade that, it doesn't take long before that actually overtakes even the Waning Moon Gloves. Like a +10, that probably does overtake it, right? So 51%, there we go. And I get 20% additional crit chance, and we don't have any form of, like, if I happen to decide I want more health, that's not even going to be a problem. Which in my instance means we've now hit that 100% crit chance cap, and we don't need to care about anything. That is an immediate upgrade to my character build right there, right? Which then means we have stuff that looks like this. I've now got more than 100% crit. As far as I can tell, there's no overcrit. What I mean by overcrit is, like, if you've ever played Warframe, there's orange and red crits after the actual crits, and I don't think we have that here. So there's no 200% and then we get to double up on that crit damage multiplier. So once you've hit 100%, you don't need to care about crit chance anymore. And the only thing that matters after that then is how you raise your crit damage and your spell damage. We have all of the external multipliers from the skill tree, so we don't really need to worry about those now. So the closer we keep those, the faster you're increasing your damage. So realistically, you might decide to go for more perception, or maybe you've decided that your mana needs to recharge faster, and that is enough for you. Lastly, while we're talking about crafting, we can also attach relics, as you can see here. This works by purchasing a slot, as you can see, and then we can add stuff on here. Now, I haven't seen anything that makes me go, oh my god, I need to get that on there now yet. But when I do, I'm sure you guys will see that in the streams. Lastly, on top of that, we are also, of course, able to reduce the weight of items. This is better on items that are heavier. So if we look at something like the Priestess's Cape here, you can see that this has recently been made much easier. Previously, it was much more expensive to drop something like the Priestess's Cape down, but as it seems here, we are able to get rid of the weight of these much quicker. Oh, there we go. We can still see on the Spellslinger's boots. Some of the early armor sets are actually much harder to drop the weight of than some of the later stuff. For whatever reason, they've decided that dropping the weight on things that are much later in the game is much easier for us to do. So again, just something that you'll need to bear in mind and use to your advantage whenever you need to. So with that done then, let's go ahead and just see how this rocks out against some enemies. We're gonna go Kunakt because I feel like the third map is more spoilery and the enemies there don't seem all that much harder anyway. We're gonna make it nighttime because enemies get a bit stronger at night. Let's see if we can get the big boy to spawn for a bit of a demonstration here. I am just gonna use basic fireballs. There is a ridiculous spell on the third map called Severing Ray, and whilst those numbers don't look high, yeah, it does stupid damage. Let's see if we can get the big boy to spawn there. All right, it doesn't seem to want to spawn, so let me just show this, right? So one of the best thing about the spell that I want to use, and I'm not really going to talk too much about spell selection, but Scorching Blaze is sick. If you guys want to know where the second one is, I think most people have the first one. The second one is over in the western end of the map, but I don't want to talk about too much about some of the really cool areas that might be spoilery. But I just charged this up, and you can see that it homes in, and even on like stronger enemies, it just one-shots them. And because I've got two, I bet I can't even gather these up, can I? I've got two, I can have the second one charging when the first one goes off. And because they home when they're charged, I barely even have to get my cursor over the enemy, right? I don't have to care about anything. This is going to be a little bit spoilery. So if you don't want to see this bit, I don't blame you. But we're going to head into somewhere. We're going to face a harder enemy because I couldn't get the big knight thing to spawn. And I thought that would have been a good way just to demonstrate the damage. So we're actually going to get something that should take a few shots. And as you saw, we're in veteran mode. So this is not me trying to like fool you guys in. I'll pull it up again once we get into the boss fight. All right, so to start with, here's one of those big knight guys. Optional enemy boss thing. And then we have a giant. Now, for this, I'm going to show you how you should technically use this build. And that is with a Scorching Blaze and a Blood Transfusion. I don't know how well it's going to last. We've got the big guy in the front here. So you can see what you should really do is you should get the bleed on there. Oops, same into the wrong guy. And then get this in for the damage. Man, we're just wrecking everything. All right, so you can either use this for the big stuns, or what you should really do is you should be pinging the bleed on there because the bleed is applying an extra damage multiplier for us, and then you can just pretty much destroy anything that stands in your way. I'll pull this up now. I try not to cut just so you guys can see. We're in veteran mode here, no trickery pokery. And, you know, if you guys think you've got a more powerful way, that's fine, but it's just not necessary.